Welcome to Gateway to Growth, and welcome to Rogaland. We are so happy to finally kick off this project. Gateway to Growth is the result of a joint ambition and collaboration to accelerate the green shift and to demonstrate that our products and solutions can have a global impact. My name is Anne Marie Lofthus, and I work for Klimapartnere in Rogaland. I will be one of your hosts today.
And my name is Kristin Skofteland. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer and Legal Counsel here at Beyonder. And today we are very happy to be broadcasting live from our new Beyonder Battery Center in Forus, Sandnes and Rogaland. So first and now, without any undue delay, I will be introducing our first speaker of today, our own Minister of Petroleum and Energy, Tina Bru. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and dear climate partners, thank you for the invitation to be here with you today. I am very excited to talk to the dynamic business community in my home county of Rogaland, and I really do wish I was there in person instead, but we'll just have to make do with the digital solution as we have gotten very used to this past year. But this is a great opportunity to talk about the links between climate, energy, and of course, industry. And this is key to secure future jobs and, of course, welfare in Norway. And Norway is, as we all know, a small country. So we must work together to compete in the international markets. And in this regard, the government's export strategy is very important. And I really encourage all clusters and organizations, local or national, to cooperate as closely as possible. But Norway is very well positioned to increase our market shares globally, and especially for the energy-related industries. My ministry also supports Norwegian energy partners, which is an important tool. And above all this, Norway's climate goals, they stand firm. The Norwegian government is committed to do our part to reach the goals in the Paris Agreement. But simultaneously, we have to provide energy for a growing world population. And with our industry and energy resources, Norway is well positioned. Firstly, we will continue as a major renewable nation. Thanks to a carbon-free power system based on hydropower, we are in a unique position when it comes to electrifying industries and transportation. Secondly, we will continue to contribute as a petroleum nation. In a low carbon society, lower emissions from the production of oil and gas will be important. And thirdly, but not least, we have the human resources here in Norway. We have a very well-educated population. We have a workforce with high digital competence, and this makes us well placed to meet the demands of the energy transition. By building on the technology and competence in our oil and gas sector, we can provide the foundation for new sustainable opportunities in other sectors, such as, for example, carbon capture and storage, where we have made substantial progress this year by launching our big project Longship. Another area is, of course, offshore wind, where Norway is taking a lead with the world's biggest floating wind farm, Hywind Tampen. And our aim is to contribute to the development of technology and competence globally to continue and contribute to the decarbonization of the energy systems. In just 9 days, I will present a new white paper to Parliament on long-term value creation from Norwegian energy resources. And this white paper will, of course, mention many of the things that I have already talked about. But my goal is to assess the industrial potential in our energy resources for future sustainable and profitable jobs and, of course, value creation. And one cross-cutting theme is the continued focus on research and development, which must be closely aligned with the needs of industry. And competence and cutting-edge technology is vital to be successful in the fierce global competition. So to conclude, there are many positive developments and initiatives taking place as we speak today. And as the minister in charge of the Norwegian energy sector, my role is to put in place the best possible framework for the energy industry to thrive in and to work together with all of you. So now my time is up, but thank you so much for your attention. And it's my pleasure to pass the word on to County Mayor of Rogaland, Marianne Chesak. So thank you so much and good luck with the rest of the meeting. And I wish you all a very good day.
Welcome to today's kickoff for Gateway to Growth. I am so excited to see this project unfolding. This could be a significant starting point to accelerate high potential technologies and energy solutions from our region out to the global market. And it could showcase how products and solutions from Rogaland can impact the transition worldwide. The types of businesses that you will hear about today are crucial to realize new opportunities for growth and workplaces in our region. For Rogaland, this is how we stay relevant and attractive as a community for students and families alike. We have a long tradition as one of the most vibrant expat communities in Norway, and I'm excited to hear of all the export opportunities that the global market has to offer. As a county mayor, it is important for me that our region contributes actively to support industry and trade that are looking to establish here. With the EU turning towards new products and solutions for a sustainable future, these are indeed exciting times. Rogaland County already contributes as a supporter for our 23 municipalities in their positioning for new opportunities in industry and trade. Our administration knows our local communities well, and we have the overview of the extensive knowledge and competence present in our part of the country. Rogaland is the main localization for high-level technology environments surrounding the energy industry. That means that we are the hub for a record number of new initiatives growing from the transition taking place. As a proactive supporter of industry and trade development, Rogaland County knows what businesses need to be commercially viable and to grow beyond our borders. And that is also why I am so eager to hear more from you about this subject today. Because we have to work together to realize the opportunities ahead of us. Academia, R&D, business and industry will need more of these kind of arenas in the future to share ideas and practices that will enhance our position as an active industry region. We have been lucky and driven in our establishment of great wealth and welfare in our country. But up to this point, the world has come to us for our resources. But now, we need to get out there in the world to show off what we have to offer. That is why collaboration between all segments will be so valuable for all of us. I'm confident that this will provide us a multitude of opportunities for industrial development. I'm excited to hear Bertha Lende Rød's thoughts on how we can transform conversations and start talking about new green community in new ways. And I would like to extend a special welcome to the international speakers and participants. I'll be listening attentively to the Ambassador of India's insights on the country's role and action taking place on clean energy and other sustainability goals. And welcome also especially to Camilla Nordheim-Larsen from UNCCD. She'll tell us more about the UN project in the Sahel of Africa, the Great Green Wall, which has received a $17 billion to re-green and build up the region. This will surely provide many opportunities for industry and trade, also for our region. Thank you so much for taking part in what I think is one of the most interesting times to work with business development. Thank you.
Thanks to both the Minister, Tina Bru, and to our County Mayor, Marianne Chesak. We have a great program lined up for you today. Rogaland is historically known for being the oil and gas capital of Norway, but it's also known for its entrepreneurial spirit and access to vast technical competence and resources. We started Gateway to Growth as a joint ambition to accelerate and high potential technologies and energy solutions from the region to the global market. This is Gateways to Growth official kickoff, which we hope is something that we will be the start of increasing focus and interactions to reach our regional, national, and global goals. We are now on a platform that are for networking purposes, which means that you can all reach out to each other as participants and speakers, and to see if you find common grounds for future business. We plan to have more both small and larger events the next year on this platform on different topics.
And now for our next part of the program, we will talk about Rogaland's role in the energy transition. With us to lead the conversation, we have Liv Monica Stubbholt. Liv Monica is currently a partner in the law firm Selmer. She has held former top management positions in the Aker Group. She has passed as a politician, and she's been Secretary of State in the Ministry of Affairs and also in the Ministry of Petroleum and Energy. With her, she has Hege Kverneland, that among other things now chair the Kverneland Energy Company. She also has Gaute Hagerup, who's working for C40 Global Cities. And also, last but not least, we have Anne Woie and Anette Sæther. They are both head of economic development and international affairs in Stavanger kommune and Haugesund kommune. So, Liv Monica, I pass the word to you.
Thank you very much, Kristin, and congratulations on establishing an exciting new platform to discuss industrial policies and export opportunities for all of Norway and for Southern Norway and Rogaland. My name is Liv Monica Stubbholt, and I am practicing law as partner in law firm Selmer, that of course has a Stavanger office. And in addition, I enjoy a commercial orientation with the companies I work with, and I also sit on the board of many exciting companies that are going into the energy transition. So this is why I think it's so interesting to bring to you, dear audience, the particular top selected group of speakers in this part of the event. And indeed, Anne Woie will be our first speaker. Go ahead. I'm sorry, is it Hege going first? Go ahead.
I can go first. It looks,
Please do.
Looks like
Thank
that.
you. So
Yeah.
Hege Kverneland, you have a long track record in national oil well Marco, and currently you hold an interesting clutch of positions working with energy transition and other new sustainable businesses. Go ahead.
Thank you. So my name is Hege Kverneland, and I've been in the oil and gas business for almost 30 years. And I'm very proud of coming from that business. And I still have some board appointments now where I'm still working in oil and gas, but I'm also working in 2 other companies that's really part of the energy transmission. I work 20% for a small company called Desert Control. That's also going to be presented later today. And I'm also the chair of the board for Kverneland Energy, which I'm now going to represent, if you like, in this session here. But for me, it's very important to say that this energy transition, it's very important that we don't forget our past. the oil and gas sector has a lot to give us. I've been Chief Technology Officer for National Oil Well Varco for almost 11 years. So I've been mainly in Houston in this position. And there's so much we can learn from the international sort of bringing the oil and gas out in the world, or the technology that we have in Norway. So we must not forget our background either, but we should definitely look ahead and looking into the energy transition. And that's my intro. So back to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you again. Thank you for sharing those thoughts. We'll revert to you. So I would like then to introduce Gaute Hagerup. He is the head of the C40 Oslo office. And Gaute, C40, what is that?
Thank you so much for inviting me and having me on board this panel. My name is Gaute Hagerup. I'm heading off the C40 office in Oslo. And C40 is the world's largest climate network for cities, actually for mega cities in the world, where 97 of the world's largest cities are members, representing 10% of the population of the world, and 25% of the GDP is produced in these cities. Oslo, tiny little Oslo, is member not as a megacity, but as an innovator city. And that's because so many of the other cities, they look to Oslo and they acknowledge that Oslo is pioneering in so many interesting areas when it comes to climate work. And the overall objective and goal for this network, all these 97 cities, they are there in order to make their part of the job to reach the Paris Agreement of 1.5 degree warming. So Oslo has a very outstanding position in this, and that's quite impressive, actually, for being so small as it is. I can also add that there are two major tasks and missions that we are working on behalf of this whole climate network, and that is the climate budget work, and it is clean construction. Meaning that Oslo has done pioneering work. It's actually the first city in the whole world to implement a climate budget. Now, a number of other megacities want to learn from Oslo and implement their own versions of a climate budget. Same goes for clean construction. Oslo was the first city in the world to have a zero emission construction site. Now, a number of large cities want to learn from Oslo. They have joined the Clean Construction Declaration. Los Angeles and Paris, amongst others, they are delivering the Summer Games in 2024 and 2028. They want to make it as the construction for these games as clean as possible. So there are many interesting and impactful things going on.
Well, it certainly seems like Oslo is boxing above its weight class, as we say.
Absolutely.
Very good. So I think I will return to Hege because I think you just joined in the Beyonder Forus studio. That may be on the Voya.
Thank you so much. And I also have to thank the organizers for the opportunity to give a short information about the city of Stavanger and I have to say the Stavanger region, and also some information from Haugesund that unfortunately could not attend to this as planned. First of all, I'm very proud of Stavanger's history and the history we can tell about the spirit of transition in our area. The key has been hard work and willingness, but also necessity to develop business from fishery and maritime industry to oil and gas industry. For 50 years, oil and gas industry. And now we are heading for the renewables and green industry. One of our main keys to this transition is competence. And 50 years with competence from the oil and gas will be crucial to develop the new and green transition. The city of Stavanger recently finished our strategy for the business development for the city. And the main goal for the strategy is to contribute that Stavanger region will be the region of highest value creation, power of competition, and be in the front of the green transition. And to have such goals, we also need to have actions. The strategy of our neighbor municipalities and the county is very similar. The city of Stavanger decided in 2019 that emission in the city shall be reduced by 80% when we reach 2030. And we need to, and we therefore are looking for every possibility to reach those goals. One example is that we recently launched a financial support for those who want to establish electrical power supply for cars in apartment complexes. In Rogaland, which are the northern part of Rogaland County, they have a program that has been going on for several years called Renergi, or in English, Clean Energy. The project aimed to use waste energy from the process industry to be a resource for other businesses. And in Karmøy, we also can find the Met Center, which is a test center and a very important test center for floating wind. The city of Stavanger will support this test arena and is currently looking in to be a co-owner of it. But we also have other projects in the green transition. This January we launched a project that we call the Capital of Energy, and it stands on both oil and gas, but also the renewables, hydrogen, floating wind, solar power, and so on. And therefore also we have started to arrange with several other organizers this yearly high wind conferences that will have a focus on wind energy and also most on floating wind energy. But also in biogas, the city of Stavanger have just been giving some 3 million kroner to establish a biogas center just to get the fertilizers from the agriculture and the aquaculture to be a new resource, gas. Our municipalities in the region are supporting the industry clusters to help their members do their green transition. And we also support Validé, for example, to funding the startup companies. Stavanger, the city of Stavanger and also the region, we are very big on agriculture and also aquaculture. There's big opportunities for a green transition in this area to develop new technology and also to could export this technology. And we live in an area with lots of test arenas. You can come here, you can pilot, you can test, and therefore you have a product you can export later. The city of Stavanger is also a member of the World Energy City Partnership. It's a worldwide organization which was founded on oil and gas. This organization is also turning to green transition. And we are discussing worldwide how the cities can be a part in this transition that's needed and wanted. So what City of Stavanger is doing, and I know also the other municipalities, are supporting good projects financially, but also developing networks that could be good opportunities. And I think this new Gateway to Growth is a very good project to get together and create new possibilities. But the most of us, as we all know, 1 + 1 is far more than 2. And therefore we try to collaborate with so many we can to achieve the sustainable goals, to achieve the future businesses in our region and also for the world. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much on that. And I think the simple fact that you have the title of Head of Economic Development and International Affairs just tells something about the Stavanger and the Stavanger region focus. So I almost envy your job. It's an incredibly export-orientated way to think about development of the region. So let me kick the ball to you, Hege. You heard on the Voya talk about the importance of competence and the transition and collaboration between fossil fuels and the renewable and the energy transition industries. But is it that easy that it can sound sometimes that you simply switch one engineer from one job to another? Give us your view on what it will take to do this.
Well, yeah, thank you. First of all, you know, we're engineers, we always like challenges. And so we love that. And, you know, a control system is a control system if it works on an oil and gas rig or if it's work on an wind turbine or whatever. And the electronics work the same, the hydraulics works the same. So you know, in technical terms, it's the same, but they look at different things. Material is the same. We have a lot of knowledge in oil and gas on material science, control systems, subsea, and all these areas is important for the transition when it comes to offshore windmills, for example, or the aquaculture. All these things, the technology is similar or the same. We have to learn what applications we're going to use it for, of course, because the applications is different, but the technology is similar. And that's why I'm saying all the knowledge that we have in oil and gas, and believe me, oil and gas is very high tech. For those who say that oil and gas is not high technology are definitely wrong. But as we can use this knowledge that we have in the area here, it's a great opportunity for us here in Stavanger, but in all of Norway, to use those resources and to really get ahead of our competitors in other countries because of the knowledge we have. And another thing I'd say, you know, engineers, we are also very stubborn. And especially engineers in Norway are extremely stubborn. So when we're told this is not working, we don't, and the boss tells us this is not working, we don't believe him. We continue working and we make it work eventually. So, which is also a great thing for Norwegians, because we don't necessarily take a no for a no. We still try and we continue working on it until we find a solution. Which is, by the way, extremely annoying if you're a manager, because if you tell someone you shouldn't work on that, they continue working on it. But for innovation, it's great.
Ege, that's a great description. Now let me kick the ball to you, Gaute. Stubborn people who like challenges, is that how we solve the challenges of cities as well?
Yes, absolutely. And I really like what Hege said when it comes to, you know, the technology being used on the North Sea bed and offshore of Norway. I mean, I would say the market in the cities around the world is much larger than just the offshore industry in Norway, even though that already is big enough. But I mean, there are far more problems to be solved out in the huge cities, and the technology from the west coast of Norway is definitely needed there. It's just a question of transitioning from one kind of customer to another kind of customer. I would say there are so many things that needs to be solved, and C40 will really be an engine for those markets. C40 will gather different cities around particular challenges, declaring ambitions through declarations. We have the Clean Construction Declaration, for example, where we want to get to zero emission on all construction machinery and all components, all buildings materials, the production of cement, the production of steel, and all this. How can we try to reach zero emission in the production of these things? I know there is a lot of work going on in Norway on carbon capture. For example, in Oslo, we do have a incineration plant where we burn the waste of Oslo. It's the largest emission, the source of CO2 emissions in Oslo. I think it's almost 15% of all the emissions from Oslo. And we cannot succeed with our ambitious plans without a carbon capture solution for this. And if Oslo can solve that, then there is 500 other cities in Europe that need the same technology. And I know technology from Norway is really on the go and in the lead for this. Same goes for the production of concrete, as I said. The production of concrete represents 4 times the emissions than the total air industry in the world. 8% of the total emissions come from the production of concrete itself. Every week, there is built new buildings at the equivalent of the whole city of Stockholm in the world, or the whole city of New York per month. And that will go on for the eternity. The growth in the urban infrastructure in the world is so fast that it's incredible. So if we can solve some of these challenges with technology from Rogaland, so to say, or Norway, it would be fantastic. So I absolutely support what you just said, Hege, that we need to just transition the technology from one area of use to another, or to multiple others. And stubborn engineers is, of course, a really, really important part of that.
They are our heroes, the stubborn engineers. There's no doubt. Thank you, Gaute. And Anne, if I may ask, you see how Gaute's comments show and highlight how reducing greenhouse gas emission is not only the energy sector, it is indeed production industry and waste incineration. And you talked about collaboration between municipalities and regions. Do you find that really tough challenges we have to face to reduce emissions make it easier to work with your colleagues around in municipalities?
Yes, definitely. We have a challenge, a common goal in the world. We need to reduce the emissions. So I think it's easier to collaborate, but also when we join forces, there are so much more possibilities. And when Gaute now speaks about concrete, I think, okay, we need to talk, because there are some companies in our areas that's working with concrete and reduce the emission about 80%. So there are lots of collaboration that could be done, and get the process started earlier. But I have to say also in our region, the county, and also the city of Stavanger and several of the other, we have this smart city department. In Stavanger we have 10 people working with smart solution for the cities. And I agree with Gaute, there's lots of possibility and need, bigger than the offshore industry, needs for solutions, city solutions. And also that's why the public is very important, because we have the possibility to test something, test small technology, see if it's something that can be developed, and you get the proof or not the proof if it's working.
I think it's a very valid point, and I think it recognizes how it is not only straightforward to implement new solutions. They need to be tested and verified and scaled up. And I think that both Gaute and the Ministry of Petroleum Energy's comments about carbon capture is relevant with the substantial investment that Norway has done in Longship, and to bring the possibility for a full-scale value chain for carbon capture, not only to Norway, but to include European countries as customers and partners. I think this may be an important way that it also carbon capture can be an export competence-based industry for Norway going forward. So Hege, stubborn engineers, both in energy and industry and in other energy or climate technology industries. What would you look for if you were to challenge decision makers, politicians and other decision makers? What is, in your view, the one thing that they should work harder on?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, as I said, I'm coming from the oil and gas industry, and I'm proud of coming from the oil and gas industry. Carbon capture is, of course, it's good for everything, but it's also good for oil and gas production. Actually, for us, we can then make the gas production green, or greener at least. So if you look at Norway as a money-making industry, if you like, the carbon capture is maybe the one that's highest on the list for me, if we continue focusing on that one, because that will help concrete production, it will help gas production in the North Sea. There's so many industries that can be helped in Norway, but worldwide it's huge. It's that again is much bigger than oil and gas industry itself. because it influences all these other different industries. I know that Norway has a big focus on carbon capture, which is really, really good. So I guess I support that focus. Another focus is, of course, also hydrogen production. But it's sort of it's not the same, but similar, if you like. So that's also, I guess, the main things that we need to focus on. And of course, making everything electrical is also a good thing. So
Indeed.
Another one.
So green mobility, it really feeds into the smart city that Anna Woye talked about, and indeed what is your focus, Gaute. Now, I have another 2 minutes to go, and I'm going to ask Gaute to say something, because I know we'll be able to stay within that time if I challenge him. And that is to talk about the outside-in view, because we are at this gateway of growth keen to say and look at how we can export and bring our competencies out of Norway. You go to work for an international organization, and do you have some insights into what we look like from the outside looking in? Are there weaknesses and strengths that are well worth mentioning in that regard? Go ahead.
Well, definitely we have a really strong reputation when it comes to sustainability, and that solutions from Norway are per definition high quality, per definition high technology, per definition very green. But we are also perceived, perhaps, this is not very new, but we are of course perceived a little bit not that market oriented perhaps, and maybe not that outgoing. We are focusing on our own stuff and delivering things that we want to deliver rather than meeting the needs. That is perceived. I'm not saying that each company is like that, but this is the outside in view. But we have perhaps even a higher reputation that we ourselves know, so we should utilize that for all it's worth. But also I see that cities, particularly in the global south, or also other cities in Europe, they look to Oslo, Stockholm, Copenhagen, and they say, of course, you can solve that. You're Nordic, but it's not that easy for us. We're not Nordic. So we have really something to bring on when it comes to this collaborative approach. And like Hege mentioned, the stubborn engineer that really wants to work good on things, that's a strength, I think, that we should utilize.
Well, thank you very much, Gaute. And I think that's a valid closing comment to show that we need to look cross-border to find both the solutions and the interesting opportunities going forward. Thank you very much, Hege Kverneland, Anne Woye, Gaute Hagerup, and myself, Liv Monica Stubholt, signing off this session, turning back to the hosts. Thank you to the panel.
Thank you so much for those great discussions and insights. The next session, we are so happy to have with us Camilla Nordheim-Larsen from United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, in short, UNCCD. She is going to tell us about the project, the Great Green Wall, that County Mayor Marianne Chesak mentioned earlier. The Great Green Wall is an African-led movement with an epic ambition to grow 8,000 kilometers natural wonder of the world across the entire width of Africa. Following Camilla, we will hear brief presentations from companies in our own region, working with technology and solutions that could potentially be applied here or in other global projects. The following companies are Ole Christian Sivertsen from Desert Control, Øyvind Westerdal from Norsk Solar, Hege Kverneland from Kverneland Energy, Knut Roar Vig from Nordic Unmanned, and Svein Kverneland from Beyonder. But first, let's watch a clip from the documentary The Great Green Wall, written and directed by Australian producer Jared P. Scott.
My home is embattled by desertification and drought, migration and conflict. restoring the land is a matter of survival. It's up to us to create an African dream.
We're talking about revitalizing the ecosystem, the economy of communities and villages. The future generation will hold us accountable.
If people can't work their land, millions across the region will be forced to migrate.
Le convoyeur va te donner à un autre convoyeur. Tu es déjà vendu à ce convoyeur sans te rendre compte. J'ai eu 4 amis qui ont pris la balle.
Rai ካብ ችግር ነው የሚወጣው። በሁሉ እዚህ ዙሪያ መድረሽ ባልት ነው መሰራለ እጃችንና ጉልበታችን ብቻ።
The Great Green Wall, it's not just about planting trees. It has to become a movement from the whole continent, from the whole world.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Well, I presume you can. Thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this exciting event. I'm Camilla Nordheim-Larsen from the United Nations, and I will take you some 7,000 kilometers further south from the Rogaland region and talk to you about the epic Great Green Wall initiative. I will try to share my screen. And I hope you can all see my screen. What is the Great Green Wall and how is it relevant to this conversation that you're having here today? It really is an African-led movement with an epic ambition to re-green landscape across the entire width of Africa, all the way from Senegal to Djibouti. And it has originally started as a tree planting initiative to keep the Sahara Desert back, but rather quickly moved into a sustainable development initiative, which is tackling some of the global challenges that we are facing today, such as climate change, food insecurity, migration and conflicts. And once, if we achieve the ambition of the Great Green Wall, it will really be one of the largest living structures on Earth. And it's today, the word wall has often negative connotations, but this is really a wall that is trying to unite people across the continent. Just to give you a very brief overview of the history. So the dream of creating an African Great Green Wall has started already back in the 1970s when the Sahel, the region, was rocked by successive droughts and a number of issues related to natural resource degradation started to emerge. And in the face of these increasing desperate circumstances around food and water shortages, but also conflict and unemployment, some leaders across the Great Green Wall, across the African nations, came up with the idea of the Great Green Wall, and that's how it was born. It was launched in 2007 by the African Union, and today it's supported by a broad alliance of national, regional, and international partners like the United Nations under the leadership of the African Union. Now, a decade on, some progress have been made. I think today we're 2021 and approximately 18% has been achieved in terms of the goals for 2030. However, to really reach the big ambitions of the Great Green Wall by 2030, we do require to really ramp up both investments, there's also political action. Now, what are some of the stakes that this region faces today? Climate change and desertification, so land degradation, is really acting together as a multiple threats, and it's contributing to both food insecurity in the region. Currently, 33 million people are regarded to be food insecure, but this is really numbers that have not been updated following the current pandemic we're in and are expected to increase significantly. In terms of unemployment, this is the region where 80% of population are employed by the agriculture sector. So when you do have degradation of natural resources, you do see increasing unemployment. Migration, forced migration. The UK Ministry of Defence is estimating that as many as 60 million people could migrate from sub-Saharan Africa in the next 30 years or so. And also in the region, the degradation of resources are closely linked to conflict. For example, in Lake Chad area, which has shrunk by 90% since the 1960s, we do see a direct link with loss of livelihoods and the rise of Boko Haram, for example, who are coming in and providing employment to young people. And finally, energy, and very importantly, lack of access to energy is really one of the largest impediments to the economic and social development of the region. In the Sahel, roughly half of the population do not have access to electricity. In Niger, for example, only 20% have access to electricity. However, I'm not really here to talk about the doom and gloom and all the problems. I want to spotlight the opportunities. For us who's been working on this amazing initiative for a while, we do see a lot of opportunities that is worth highlighting. Population, large population, young population, 65% today are under 25. So you do have a really an able and young workforce, and also rising urbanization are creating market opportunities. Also in terms of energy, there's a large untapped energy demand, particularly around renewable energy, and sun is abundant in the Sahel, so also around solar, with the potential of roughly 14 billion kilowatt per year. The region is also rich, very rich in natural and mineral resources, oil and gas, but also iron, as well as some species that are very unique to the region, like shea, moringa, and baobab. There's also a recently agreed continental trade agreement that was launched this year, which makes it much easier to trade between countries in the region in the future. And finally, at the UN, we do see the region as a testing ground for how climate change will impact species and what can grow with rising temperatures and what cannot. So the ambition is large. It's to restore 100 million hectares of currently degraded land for production, but also for ecosystem provision, as well as for sequestration of carbon. So carbon sinks up to 250 million tons of carbon, as well as to create some green jobs in the region. And the initiative is contributing to an amazing 15 of the 17 of the Sustainable Development Goals. So today, as I mentioned, some achievements, but we do really need to scale up both the rehabilitation and also the restoration activities. Roughly 8 million hectares needs to be restored every year if we're going to reach our targets. And a recent study by the UN estimated that this will cost up to about $3.6 billion a year, which means that we are requiring some $36 billion by 2030. The good news is that in January at the One Planet Summit organized by President Macron, $17 billion was announced as commitments for the Great Green Wall. And my team here at the UN, we're now tasked to kind of track that and make sure that those monies, that funding is actually reaching the ground and investments on the ground. So this is also exciting in the context of the discussion here. Finally, on the solutions, there are particular areas that we are looking for investments that we're trying to make between technologies and solutions, as well as the needs on the ground, particularly around climate resilient infrastructures, around renewable energy solutions, such as mini-grid or off-grid approaches, meteorological services, as well as some low-cost kind of agriculture machinery for farmers. And there's also an emerging opportunities around remote sensing, satellite imagery, but also drones to monitor the implementation and really build the business case of what is there in terms of opportunities on the land. Farm development, both small and medium size, helping companies and producers to develop sustainable value chains, access markets, both internationals but also regional, as well as different types of precision agriculture, etc. And then finally, we're looking for food solutions in the region around some indigenous species like fonio, which is one of these super grains that could be an important contribution to local and regional food security. So just to end, I just wanted to highlight how we at the UN could help in matchmaking and really taking some of these opportunities that we will hear here, have heard and will hear here, and bring them help open up markets in the region. First of all, we are connecting project developers with financing opportunities, particularly blended finance solutions, so helping with public finance, some of that 17 billion for soft investments around capacity building and technical assistance, and really also match that with impact investors. And we are working and have set up an impact investment facility that is really looking to invest in technological solutions in the region. We also help build partnership with governments. They are our clients as the UN, and also to really, once the solutions are tested, to make sure that we can scale them up. So not that it stays at a small scale, but really bring it across the whole region. And I'm really looking forward to hearing the next presentations. And I must admit that the first one, Desert Control, have been working closely with for a while. And this is really the solution that has been developed by Desert Control. We see in the UN as a potential game-changing solution for the region, and really hope that we can make it accessible to governments in the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. It seems the microphone is at least green here. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, I had to include a great green wall enthusiast on our introduction slide. So with 3 minutes to go, let's just kick it off and go to the next slide. So 12 million hectares of fertile land perish to desertification annually. That's equal to something like 2,000 football fields of fertile soil and land turning into desert every hour. And the annual cost to the global economy of this land loss is more than $490 billion US. Further, as this plays out, our global population is also growing so fast that we will need more food in the next 40 years than our planet has produced over the last 500 years. And growing food also requires a lot of water. Already today, more than 70% of all available freshwater resources on Earth are consumed by agriculture for food production. And you can just imagine, as more soil turns to sand, we will need even more water just to maintain the current levels of productivity. Next slide, please. So that is why Desert Control invented LNC, liquid natural clay, also referred to as liquid nanoclay. This is a liquid compound that can turn degraded land and sand into fertile soil. It can also reduce the amount of water that's needed to grow food and to cultivate and maintain green ecosystems by up to 50%. Our vision is really to make Earth green again by stopping and reversing desertification and the degradation of vital topsoil. In this picture, we can see a 5-month transformation project that we did in the UAE, where we converted a piece of desert into a forest of food, really. And in addition to reducing water consumption here, the agricultural yield increase for the various crops we did was increased by 17 to 62%. So through our mission, we enable resilient and climate-smart agriculture, forests, and green landscapes. as well as enabling ecosystem restoration by addressing soil as the core foundation. Next slide, please. So hardly any of the United Nations sustainability goals can be achieved without addressing soil and land. Restoring the Earth's degraded soil ecosystems can offset 5 to 6 gigatons of CO2 annually. And when we include soil as the foundation also for stopping and reversing deforestation with another 8 gigatons, this provides a pathway to achieve 57% of the 2DS target of the Paris Agreement, just from nature-based solutions alone, starting with soil and sustainable land management as the core foundation. Next slide. So this is why I am extremely enthusiastic about the Great Green Wall. And this is an amazing initiative and a great example of ecosystem restoration to foster the prosperity of people and planet on a global scale. And I think this region, the Stavanger region, has enormous capabilities to contribute to this. I think this can be a great example. What we are good at in this region is mega projects, business development, thinking new things. And we have a lot of the capabilities that Camilla mentioned as solutions that are needed for the Great Green Wall. A great way to balance the dependency that we have on the oil and gas industry and creating new export opportunities for the world. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm Øyvind Westerdal. I am the CEO of Norsk Solar, and I'll be presenting on how Norsk Solar can contribute to this project. Next slide, please. So Norsk Solar is what we call a vertically integrated independent power producer, which basically means we develop, finance, build, own, and operate solar power plants, and we do so with long-term power purchase agreements. And again, we do that, which is basically selling power to state-owned utilities, but also, and this is the specific niche or special focus for Norsk Solar, we also sell the power to corporates or businesses directly. And we do so in emerging markets where we maximize the impact, both on sustainability, but also on economic growth. We were established in 2017, and we've had quite a bit of growth and are now listed at the Oslo Stock Exchange, and we've established offices globally. Next slide, please. So what's interesting for us, on the one hand side, we see that solar prices has gone down significantly, 99% over the past 30 so years, and yet we see that in these emerging markets, the power consumers, if you own a factory, if you own a business, you don't get access to that cheap, reliable electricity. So already in 2019, we could outcompete coal in Pakistan, and we see that in all of these markets, we have cheap solar that the businesses don't get access to. And this is when Norsk Solar comes into the picture by not selling to the state-owned utilities, but we can actually sell the power directly to the companies, allowing them to both have lower cost on electricity, but also allowing them to reach their sustainability goals. Next slide, please. So for Africa, we see this as a continent full of opportunities and varied opportunities as well. So ranging from South Africa, where we did our first investment in 2018, looking at decentralized power, to North Africa and Morocco, where we are also implementing electrical vehicle charging stations together with solar. So it's quite varied. What we see is that from Norsk Solar, together with our partners, ranging from impact investors such as FinFund and Power Africa, which is a USA-based initiative, we have the ability to deploy our projects in Africa, and we are active in many of these markets. So again, our contribution would be to provide reliable, clean energy, and also letting the companies reach their sustainability goals. Thank you.
So my name again is Hege Kverneland. I'm representing Kverneland Energy, and we are delivering hybrid systems with battery solutions and solar panels to the industry. We're a small company with 17 employees at the moment. This is a picture of the summer house of my cousin. He had a problem 10, 15 years ago. He didn't have power on his summer house. So he and his son started trying out solar panels, because in order to get power out to the summer house, he had to pay 1 million Norwegian kroner to get a cable out there. And that was too expensive, so he started with solar panels. And this is how a pain can become a business. What we're delivering now is solar power systems that, as you saw on the picture, can be installed on a roof and supply an off-grid solution. What we're also doing now, we found out that solar panels was very exciting, but combining it with batteries is when it gets really, really interesting. And we can even combine it with a power generator or a diesel engine, so that in order for the generator not to operate at a low percentage all the time, we can have it operate at optimum percentage for, say, 3 hours a day, and then using the battery. And this saves a lot of diesel engines, diesel usage, which is very advantageous. Another one is that we can also supply this energy back to the grid. I'll show you some pictures that probably show you a little bit better what we're doing. The picture up in the left corner is a picture of Sandalen turisthytte, which has installed off-grid power. So it's not connected to the energy line itself, but it's completely off-grid, and it uses much less diesel engine than what's normal, because we can do the combination of solar and diesel engine. Another big part of it is the aquaculture, which is also an off-grid solution that uses diesel engines today, but combination with battery power, we can reduce the diesel consumption substantially. Another project that we're working on right now is on Svalbard. As you all know, they are wanting to reduce the amount of coal that's used there. So we can now use solar panels, combination with wind and diesel engines, to reduce the power consumption there. And finally, the picture there is with, for example, on the roofs for, it can be a store, it can be a barn, it can be whatever. So this was very, very fast, and I'm sorry about that, and we had some technical issues, but I hope you got some of it at least. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for this opportunity to present Beyonder. My name is Svein Kvernstuen. I'm the CEO and founder of Beyonder. And Beyonder is today the host of this conference. And we are located here in our battery center, where we are developing new, more sustainable energy solutions, focusing on industry and heavy transport. And we have to change the way we are producing products in the way to come. So Beyonder has taken a more circular approach, looking at the ingredients, and have developed a patented process where we now can replace the more questionable materials such as cobalt and nickel with a special activated carbon that we can produce from waste material from the forest industry. And we are also boosting the energy in our batteries by implementing silicon, which is the second most abundant material on the Earth's crust. So with this, we have then developed more powerful batteries that last longer and meet the demand and the requirement for the performances asked by the industry. So we see that there are quite a few different applications where this technology can then help electrifying and allowing for the transmission over to low carbon society, both in stabilizing the grid to allow for a grid set up for the high electrification and the high powers coming when we are electrifying transport and industry. We are supporting also the renewable solar and wind, which is fluctuating. And we are looking at fast charge stations to allow for more electrified transport on roads and on sea, as well as also boosting the power to allow for heavy transport. And folks, we are actually, we've started producing cells. So down here, just below us now, we are producing with machines tailor-made for our production process, producing the Norwegian first battery cells, which are very sustainable and produced on this with this activated carbon. And in short, that means Beyonder has developed our own technology. So we are basing the ingredients on more sustainable materials, replacing the cobalt and nickel, and using waste material to produce high quality battery cells. We are also optimizing the production process, reducing the energy to produce these, and we are creating green jobs as well as building up an industry with massive export potential. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Knut Barvik. I'm the CEO of Norwegian Man. I will be saying a few words about our company. So Norwegian Man is a drone company, and that means that we are basing the company on what is potential in the current drone technology. We started the company just about 6 years ago, and when we started the company, we were very inspired by the possibility new technology could have within the oil and gas industry, basically replacing the existing solutions with new, better solution, both less risky solutions, but also more environmental friendly solutions. And we quickly discovered that the oil and gas industry is not the industry you want to go for if you want to have a rapid change. So we focused on the governmental market very quickly. And we looked into what new data could be produced out of the drones that we were coming to the market with. And interestingly enough, quite quickly, the company didn't take the turn as we expected. So environmental monitoring turned out to be one of the most low-hanging fruits for us as a drone company, which came as a surprise to everybody. But in reality, it was given. We had technology, and there was a need to monitor ships, to monitor the sulfur level in the ships. There was a need to monitor oil on water and to give better data to those who were collecting the oil on the water. And on top of that, the drones are producing a considerable CO2 reductions of other aerial vehicles, manned aerial vehicles. And the combination of this is a very strong proposal to the market. So today we are monitoring for our main customers is European Maritime Safety Agency, and we are working for different states across Europe and their environmental authorities to monitor ships and marine life in general. And we are today 70 employees. And we from the start we were zero basically, and we did a listing of the company in the stock exchange in Oslo in December, and just recently we published our new target. So we're gonna go for a revenue of 4 billion in 2025. And it's driven by all the great things that drone could give us, and drone data and drone logistics could produce. So we are very optimistic about the effect drone could have for many of the existing operations and ways we are looking at data. So that's what we do. Thank you.
Hello there, my name is Thomas Flindskø and I'm from Integrate Renewables. Today I will tell you briefly about our company. I will also tell you about the largest microgrid installation in Norway by 2020. And last but not least, I will tell you a little bit more about Irene Kraftcontaineren, which is a battery container that is optimized for make it easier for the transformation for low carbon society. Integrate Renewables is one of the leading energy system developer in Norway. We are based in Stavanger and is now 7 years old. We have 6 employees, plus we hire people when we have large installations. Integrate Renewables participate in projects from very early stage as developer. We are also hired in as advisor, and of course we install our own energy systems. With our main competences within solar energy, wind energy, and energy storage and control system. We also have 2 daughter companies, that is Irene Energy and Irene Aqua AS. Now, the right combination of solar and batteries gives better results. And one of our hardware technology systems gives the opportunity to connect different solar installations to the same 760 volt DC microgrid. With that we can transform the energy directly into high efficient batteries. We can also use DC-DC chargers, and it's also connected to the grid so that we get a good energy flow. And we can take out the energy in several different buildings. And that is what we did in Orkdal Folkehelsesenter. If we can get it to turn. Yeah. So in Orkdal Folkehelsesenter, we actually installed 5 different solar installations. We connected it to a 760 volt DC microgrid, combining 3 different buildings to the same energy storage system. It is also prepared to connect DC-DC chargers and also an electric bus with pantograph charging. In this way, we get the optimized energy flow between the buildings, so we can do peak shaving in the different buildings at different times. We can control where the solar energy goes, so we can prioritize one building next to another. And in this way, we also get to use all locally produced energy where it's produced, instead of let the energy go out to the grid. A couple of years ago, Integrate Renewable saw that the transformation of the transport sector to electricity will take a tremendous stress on the grid. With electrical cars, machinery, buses and ferries, the grid will be really hard stressed. And that is why we came up with the concept Power as a Service. So we have developed a container, what we are calling Irene Kraftcontainer. And with that, we are solving the issues that you are getting on the grid by fast charging systems. All this we do to help with the transformation to a low carbon society. We provide to you power as a service. You have the needs and we develop the solutions. So I will invite you to the exhibition room where we have our own booth. There you can find more information about Integrate Renewables, and we have also put out some really interesting videos about more of our installations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for all those great presentations. We will now have a break for 15 minutes until 3 o'clock, where we, during the break, will showcase regional new musicians which we believe could have potential as international artists. We will see you back here at 3 o'clock sharp. Stay tuned.
fjell som holder stand. Når det meste er på hell eller tapt i båt og brann. La mitt svala skinn mot et berg som står og kan tåle regn og vind, kan tåle tid som går, tid som går. Gjerne fjell som står og stenger, bør vi klatre for å se. Gamle fjell som blir det lenge, og som var før jeg ble til. Ta meg ta meg med. Midt i stormens kast, når det lir mot kveld, vil jeg holde hardt og fast i de trygge fjell. Fjell som bare er, aldri snur og går, som jeg klamrer livet til så lenge hjärtat slår, hjärtat slår. Ge mig fjäll som står och stänger, där vi klättrar för att se. Gamla fjäll som blir det länge, och som varför är mig till. Ta mig tankar glir, blåa berg står fast, selv om verden skifter gir. Har fjellet ingen hast. Ge meg fjell som står og stenger, ber meg klatre for å se. Gamle fjell som blir lenge, og som var for en meg til. Ta mig med.
I've been pulling pages out from my memory file. There is not a place or terrain that I ever spent with you in vain. Growing, getting closer with time. You know that I'll watch Friends with you anytime. You know that I'll watch Friends with you anytime. As I am on this train down memory lane, I realize somehow I knew from the start, in this movie of my life you play the biggest part. There is not a place or terrain that I ever spent with you in vain. Growing, getting closer with time. You know that I'll watch Friends with you anytime. There is not a place or terrain that I ever spent with you in vain. Growing, getting closer with time. You know that I'll watch Friends with you anytime. You know that I'll watch Friends with you anytime. And you know that I'll be friends with you for all
Hi, and welcome back. We will dive directly into our next guest. She has a company who has already succeeded internationally. The company is Fuelbox, and Fuelbox is about how to have great conversations and our connections with each other. So now we look forward to hear Bertha Lenderød talk about how to spark conversations about sustainability.
Well, I believe that the future belongs to the curious, to the ones who are not afraid to try it, to explore it, to poke at it, to question it, and to turn it inside out and upside down. My name is Bertha Lenderød, and I am passionately curious. I believe that one small question can make a big difference in our personal lives, in our professional lives, in our teams, organizations, and in our world, in the green shift. Curiosity is said to be the new superpower. It is a skill that is fundamental in learning, development, leadership, innovation, and last, but certainly not least, it is a superpower when we want to connect with other people. And human connection is something that I am really passionate about. My journey into communication and connections started with a feeling of disconnection, with me missing the great conversations that I used to have with my husband. Next slide, please. I thought my husband back then had to be the most interesting man on earth. That is, of course, not the case now, many years later. However, back then, he was just so interesting and interested because he asked questions, and then he listened, and then he asked more questions. A few years down the road, the great conversation we used to have, the mutual curiosity, were replaced by spending time exhausted on the couch while the kids were in bed, in front of the TV, and also with our phones in our hands. Sounds familiar? And I really missed our conversation. And I was also really scared of losing us, because I had experienced in a previous marriage how loss of communication can lead to loss of connection. I had learned the hard way what happens when we stop asking. Well, then we stop sharing, and at some point we might even stop caring. Next slide, please. So I created this tool, Fuelbox, the box of great conversations, a tool to ignite curiosity, start conversations, and fuel connections. In 2013, I launched Fuelbox Couples, a box filled with open-ended questions to engage couples in fun, meaningful, and important conversations with each other and also about each other. However, I soon came to understand that there are other arenas and relationships where we need to talk with each other to be happy together and perform well together. That is, to make it together. Next slide, please. So today, me and my fantastic 7 colleagues work with governments and companies all over the world. And what they all have in common is that they want us to help them cultivate the mutual curiosity and to engage all employees in asking questions, share with each other, and learn from each other. That is, to create a culture where people are happy and thrive together. However, the main objective is always to create high performance and to release the collective potential of the organization. So how is all of this relevant for today's topic? To succeed as a couple, I learned that it was not enough for me reading all the books I could about love and relationships. I needed to engage with my husband and talk with him, not instead of to him, and together explore us as a couple, explore our different needs and dreams for the future and what our next big project could be. Next slide, please. In teams and organizations, we need to engage all employees in conversations to create trust and psychological safety, the foundation of collaboration and innovation, something that is crucial for most organizations today. And we need colleagues to talk with each other, to learn from each other, to challenge status quo, and bring their new ideas to the table, to create engagement and ownership to everything that we do in an organization. The green transition, sustainability, is not a one-man show. It's not a one company show or even a one region or one country show. It is a global challenge and an opportunity for all of us. And we need to come together, like in today's event, and start sharing with and learning from each other to find new solutions and seize opportunities. We need to create arenas where we ask better questions, challenge each other's perspectives, bring our different ideas to the table within companies as well as between companies to explore synergies. If there's one time we do not want to go fast alone, but far together, it is now, on the topic of sustainability and embracing the challenges and opportunities in the green shift. Next slide, please. So, progress, growth, learning is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their mind cannot change anything. Engaging in a conversation, sharing our different perspectives and perspective is crucial for change to happen. We live in a world where change is the new stability, and collaboration needs to be the new competition. So what I have learned the last 8 years as an entrepreneur is that asking questions and sharing our stories and different perspectives with each other creates intimacy, understanding, respect, tolerance, trust, creativity, innovation, and belonging, and yes, even happiness and love. Next slide, please. Dubai City has a vision to become the happiest city on earth. Guided by the vision of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, they are fueling a city transformation to happiness with their happiness agenda. This happiness agenda is a framework to discover, change, educate, and measure people's happiness. Fuelbox is actually a part of their happiness agenda. The government in Dubai have learned that to create change, they need to engage people in the process. Together with Smart Dubai, the government entity who is leading this transformation, we have tailored Fuelbox leadership and Fuelbox team in English and Arabic language for this purpose. We work closely with different entities in the government and train their leaders to use Fuelbox as a tool to engage all employees in conversations to connect with each other and to explore the happiness topic together. The open-ended questions in these boxes address topics like meaningfulness, happiness, tolerance, diversity, communication, innovation, leadership, etc. The government has also made these tailored fuel boxes available for the whole region, both public and private organizations. And I, of course, cannot wait for this pandemic to end so that we can travel back and continue the work we have started in Dubai. And I am, of course, very proud of this project. And I believe it is a great example of the power of involving and engaging people to create change. It also serves as a great example of what asking questions and having these conversations is fundamentally about. It is about connection. It is about feeling that we are a part of something bigger than ourselves, that we matter, and that we can make a change and a difference by engaging. Next slide, please. All of us have the need to be seen, to be heard, to feel valued, and to have a sense of belonging in this world. This is fundamental to all human beings here in Norway, in Dubai, Middle East, and everywhere else. I have learned that our connections is the most important thing all of us really have. They are crucial to how we feel, how content and happy we are, for our health, and for how we perform. A lot of studies show this, but I think all of us here also know this. So yes, I believe that one small question can make a big difference and fuel conversations that can change minds, lives, and the world. Next slide, please. So to get all of you started today, we have made available a free question package for you with 10 questions on how you and your company can get on your gateway to growth. Please use your cell phones to scan the QR code, and it will take you to these 10 questions, or you can go to fuelbox.no to find the question there and start having the conversations today. Next slide, please. I will end my talk with a scientific proven tip for all of you. And there are 3 words that all of you, according to Dr. Mark Holder's TED Talk, should use more often. That will make us fantastic conversation partners with or without Fuelbox and really fuel all of our connections. And according to his TED Talk, there are the 3 words are, please next slide, tell me more. These 3 words signals real interest, that what you are saying to me means something to me. And also, these 3 words can give you real insight, understanding, and bring any conversation to the next level or on the gateway to growth. Last slide, please. So again, please log on and find 10 questions for you and your company. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bertha, for those inspiring words. And I also encourage you to download the app that Bertha mentioned. Now, we hope that was encouragement for you to reach out to each other and have those very important conversations. Now we are heading into our finance section, where you will hear about how to succeed with green investments and to secure financing. First, for presentation, we will hear from Head of Climate and Sustainable Finance, Susanne Glørsen. She has over 10 years experience with sustainability and the financial sector, and is also a co-founder of NORSIF, Norwegian Association for Sustainable and Responsible Investments. She will invite investors Tore Edebø from Investore, Ingvild Mæland from Nysnø, and Ivar Slengesol from Export Credit Norway. They will have a conversation on how Stavanger can transition from Norway's oil capital to a driving force for technological solutions.
I'll unmute. Hi, everyone, and thank you for having me. I'll just take up my presentation. Let's see here. So to jump into it, and I'll just set something for myself here. I'll give some updates on the green investment market, and we'll use that as an intro to the panel debate we'll be having. And we are really seeing, as many of you know, a clear growth in green investments. This is evidenced among other in the equity markets. We've seen a lot of listings of new green tech companies. And I just earlier today saw that there's been a 77% increase in assets in European sustainable investment funds since 2019. So that's quite a lot, 77%. Obviously, sustainable funds can be somewhat different from green funds, but still this is a clear indication. But to show you one example from my home sphere a lot these days with bond issuance and green bond investments, we've seen tremendous growth in investments in sustainable and green bonds. In the first 3 months of this year, we've seen more issuance. We've seen 180% up since last quarter, so 378%, meaning this is, as you can see from the graph, this is really a breakout year for sustainable finance. And the other graph here to the left here, you can see that, again, this is the first 3 months of 2021, we've already hit 50% of all sustainable and green issuances last year. So this is really ramping up. And this also goes for green bonds. On the right side here, and for those who might not know what green bonds is, it's capital financing for dedicated green projects and assets. So companies can issue green bonds to finance green projects and assets, and then investors, they obviously buy these green bonds. And you can see that we're almost 50% of the 3 first months, then the whole of last year. So definitely we're seeing that even though in the beginning of COVID, there was a dip, like all bonds, this has definitely come back very strongly. We've seen records on records within this market. And it's really saying that when companies and investors also look to what what will be the competitive edge and how will companies look post-COVID, it will definitely be green. So some of the drivers, we know that all major investors globally, they have committed to sustainable investments, among other from signing the principles for responsible investments. And then they commit to, and they have to follow up on integrating sustainability in how they invest. It's also shown by net zero investment commitments from investors and asset managers. So by 2050, these investors and asset managers, they have to have net zero portfolios. And that might sound, 2050 is a long way, but this means that these people, they need to start reshuffling their portfolios quite early on to make this big shift. So this is definitely having input of the reallocation of capital and in the green direction. So having a lot of ripple effects. But most importantly, what is fascinating with this field is that there's so many fantastic business and investment opportunities. So mainstream investors, sustainability-oriented investors, they see that there's a lot of investment opportunities and opportunities to making profits from companies that deliver the solutions we need to a lot of our challenges. They are looking at huge growth markets. We really need to scale a lot of these technologies, and they have the megatrends with them. And then also we have, regulation is becoming more and more stringent with the EU's work on sustainable finance and the taxonomy. And we have consumers from both retail and corporates really changing swiftly. But we're not only seeing green investments in the equity and the bond sphere, we're also seeing increasing focus on green infrastructure, which is crucial. We need more capital going into green infrastructure. And that, green infrastructure can be a lot of things, but it can also be, train infrastructure, water delivery systems, but also direct solar and wind projects. It's a bit difficult to read the picture on the right, and that's not the intention. It's just to show that there are a lot of investor coalition initiatives on really driving more capital into green infrastructure. But not at least, we're seeing a surge in green, sustainable climate and green tech companies in the venture space. And this is needed because it's in venture space we often find the new technologies, the new innovations, and the new disruptive business models. So we really need to scale these solutions to enable the necessary scope and the speed of the green transition that we need. So, green investments, we won't save the planet or reach the Paris Agreement by only reshuffling capital on the stock exchange. You could also say that it's a bit money changing hands. Obviously, we also need that, but we do need capital into scaling these new solutions. So, and also to say, and this is an older picture, I've borrowed it from Cleantech Group, but just to indicate the growth we've seen in venture, and also, or clean tech investments in venture, and also the increasing amount of clean tech funds that we're seeing coming. And we need, there's increase in green investments, but we need much more capital going into accelerating the pace and the speed of the green transition. This is not, we also saw this coming. A lot of capital is needed, and a lot of you have seen the report from IEA coming out, net zero by 2050, in order to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. We need to be net zero by 2050, and investments in clean energy and energy infrastructure need to triple by 2030. As Fatih Birol, head of IEA, says, we need a historical surge in investments, and not only, scaling what is. We need, as I also said, rapid innovation to create technologies not yet available on the market to be demonstrated very quickly at scale. Meaning again, more, let's say, the venture space, the new and upcoming solutions that are emerging, not yet there, or are there already. So the last slide from my side, bringing me back to venture again, is we need to scale what is, the solutions we have, climate scaling rapidly. And we need, as we said, there are new technologies that we don't know of yet that we need to scale. And also to say that since the last boom of green tech, the field has become much more diverse now. It used to be about very capex intensive, hardware oriented, often very much renewable oriented investments. But now we see, improvements utilizing software in real estate, in agriculture. We have vegan meat from the laboratory, 3D printing, vertical farming, what have you. So the field is very broad, but it is also important to mention, as Nysna also has mentioned, that the field is not only about funding software. We need those breakthrough solutions, maybe more long-term investments. And here it might be a solution with more blended finance, with private and public capital coming together to scale this. So with that, I'll leave it over to us taking the next step in the panel discussion. Welcome to the panel then on how Stavanger can transition to move from being Norway's all capital to a driving force for clean solutions. So we have some great speakers with us today: Tore Gjedebo from Investora, Ingvild Melland from Nysna, and Ivar Slengestol from Eksportkreditt. And Ivar will hold a presentation a bit later today, so you can just quickly say who you are and your role. But then Nysna and Tore can give some words on themselves and some reflections on the topic today. So I'll start with Ivar, if you just say quickly about yourself, and then we'll go to Tore and then Ingvild.
Yes, Ivar Slengestol. I'm heading up strategy and business development at Export Credit Norway. About 15 years experience in renewables in different roles. And Export Credit Norway will be merged with GIEK to form a new, will be a new world-class export credit agency as of 1st of July, Eksportfinansiering Norge, or Export Finance Norway, or EXFIN for short.
Tore, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I can go. I run an investment company called Investora, mainly focusing on sustainable investments, where we have a view that we would like to get more than just financial returns, where we have an expectation that all the portfolio companies that we engage in has a sustainable business model. We try to not overcomplicate the message, but I mean, we eliminate oil and gas and hydrocarbons. We want the business model to be what we call future-proof, that we acknowledge that tomorrow's consumers is going to have different expectations and demands from customers and business models than we see today, and therefore we try to at least have a view on that and try to position ourselves in the best way possible. I think just addressing a bit on the transition, I think that of course Norway is in a bit of a exposed position as we have such a large part of our economy in oil and gas. But it's I think that the transition that we are foreseeing is something that is, at least it's good that we are getting a heads up. We're seeing that we need to probably refocus our energy on making cleaner technology and developing our solutions in a different way than we have done historically, and therefore it's good that we have a talk about it. It's important that we act, and it's important that we have these discussions to address the opportunities that we see as a community and as a city, and address it. I think that there's no skill set that we're using in the oil and gas that is not needed in the transition. So therefore, it's more a choice on where we put our efforts in the years to come. And it's going to be an interesting transition that we are going towards.
Agree. Ingvild, do you want to go next? Ingvild Melland from Nystad.
Thank you, Susanne. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the invitation to join this distinguished panel together with you guys. My role in Nysnø is to be head of the strategy and communication. Nysnø is the sovereign state climate investment company doing direct investment into clean tech companies or into venture funds. I'd like the opportunity to kind of start with the main question of today is how Stavanger is going to kind of handle the energy transition. And I'd like to think of it like a puzzle, and which kind of pieces we already have at hand in this region in order to deliver on the question, and which pieces we are missing. So let me elaborate a little bit on that. If you base it on kind of the competitive advantages that we see, and I see that we already had at hand, is of course we have natural resources. For a long time we've used the oil and gas, but now we also want to exploit the wind resources. We have waves resources, we have hydropower resources, and of course these can be developed into energy production, but also help clean tech developments of other elements. Secondly, I think it's important to remember that we have an abundance of renewable power. So our electrical vehicles is fueled by renewable power, our data storage centers are fueled by renewable powers, and this is a competitive advantage for Norway and for this region. Thirdly, I think we have an extremely strong R&D capability when it comes to energy, when it comes to material technology and bioeconomy. This is kind of an agricultural region as well, in addition to the energy. And a fourth element is our capabilities in the maritime sector. Norway has been a kind of a global nation when it comes to maritime, and kind of punching above its weight for a long time. And a lot of those ships and that competence has been developed along our coast, which is Stavanger and the Rogaland county is extremely important into. And pointing at business, I think another advantage that we have is that we have a solution-oriented, forward-looking business community. We know that we are very much been used to working in a cyclic economy with the oil and gas, so we know transformations. We have a strong university, but most of all we have people and a mindset of an entrepreneurial spirit, which I think this region can take advantage of going forward. If I'm going to point at two things which I think can be the missing pieces, so when you laid out all your puzzle and you missed the two pieces, I want to point at the access to risk capital for clean tech, and the access to international connections and networks. Even if the oil and gas industry is extremely strong on international, it's an international business as such, we need to build systematically international networks which can help us in the energy transition. And of course, coming from Nysnø, we think that both risk capital is something that we can add, but also using the investment network to build capital bridges and attracting international investors to Norway and the other way around. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Ingvild. I know you also, Ivar, you've had some concrete suggestions how to do this. Do you want to share your reflections?
Yes, and I agree with Ingvild's description there and to the barriers. But if I can just, I can add some elements that I think are important. Let me use a case, an example, which is offshore wind, and go 13 years back in time. When the oil and energy minister back then, Åslaug Haga, asked the wise men and women in the power sector in Norway, the Energy Council, Energirådet, to give her a report describing how Norway could become an offshore wind superpower. So what they suggested was many things, of course, but the main thing that the Energy Council suggested in 2008 was that Norway had to set some clear, concrete targets to build 5 to 8 large offshore wind farms, 5,000 to 7,000 megawatt by 2020 to 2025, because as they said back then in 2008, other countries are already, they've started this, they have clear ambitions, clear targets, they're moving ahead, and we'll be losing out if we're not moving. So today we can of course just we have the answer. We know where we'll be in terms of offshore wind. So we know that in 2025 we can look forward. Norway will have about 100 megawatt installed capacity. That's Hywind Tampen, which will be ready next year, and perhaps a couple of pilot projects up at Karmøy that will be in the water by 2025. Globally, there will be 100,000 megawatts installed. So Norway will have 0.1% of the global offshore wind market by 2025. If we look at the supply industry, Norwegian offshore wind suppliers had total sales of about 11 billion in 2019. That's the last available figures. The oil and gas suppliers, Norwegian oil and gas suppliers, had total sales of 397. So the oil and gas suppliers were 36 times bigger than the offshore wind suppliers in 2019, 36 times. So my point is that, intentions, and this is a bit provocative, but I'm doing it intentionally. Intentions are good, but the results count. So what I would like to see, and what we have suggested, is that you have a much clearer, bold export strategy for building new green value chains. And that needs to be concrete down into sector deals where, for example, the offshore wind industry comes together with the authorities and agree on clear targets of what they want to achieve in terms of installed capacity, in terms of exports, in terms of employment, etc. So much clearer and much stronger follow-up. And then, of course, each segment, each value chain has their own issues, and that needs to be solved. But I think it starts with much more results focus. And I'm optimistic because a lot of things are changing now. You see bigger players like High Tech Vision, for example, in Stavanger, entering this area. You have the Aker Systems, you have a lot of startups. We heard from a lot of interesting companies today. But I would like to see this results focus and this clear targets and follow up on clear targets in terms of what's actually being achieved.
And Tore, a question for you also. I mean, we know that startups, they are often having good support systems, Innovation Norge, etc. But the scale-ups in the region, how can we? What is needed for, and what can help them scale and scale out of the region, scale out to the world? What would you say?
Yeah, I think that just to comment slightly on Ivar's argument, and I very much agree with his view. I think that we've lived through some years now where we don't see the climate crisis as an opportunity, but as a threat to the Norwegian sovereignty with respect to oil and gas. And it's been a bit of a dilemma, because to if you talk about progressing with green tech, you are kind of criticizing the oil and gas. I think that as an investment opportunity, you have to look at it differently. You have to look at it as which one is the better investment. And I think that what is becoming extremely evident as we speak, and with the report from the EIA and the trends that we see in the market, is that green tech will outperform oil and gas in the years to come. And therefore I think that the transition will happen. The capital will start moving. The question is whether we are capable as early stage investors, scale up and growth investors and the stock exchange to adapt and move as quicker than the other economies in Europe and in the world, to see if we can have a competitive edge going forward. And that is very much what Eva also addresses, is that we have to seek out the opportunities that we have and chase them. And very often when you look at, if you come from a position of oil and gas, it's usually quite hard to see the opportunities in green tech. But I have a kind of a philosophy, is that you have to fall in love with the problem and not the solution. It's usually quite hard to find solutions, but it's very easy to identify problems. And the climate crisis is one of our generation's biggest problems. So there's tens of thousands of business models that will apply going forward that can and will be more profitable than to deploy the capital into oil and gas. So that's kind of just one element of it. And that kind of leads on to your question, is that what can we do to help these startups? One is, of course, that helping startups is important. It's important to help growth companies grow, but it's equally or significantly more important to help companies that are currently having significant revenue from the oil and gas industry, if they want to transform and if they want to chase opportunities outside their current market. To grow a startup from 1 to 2 people to 1,000 or to 2,000 people is extremely hard work, and it takes a lot of time. To transition an existing business over 5 to 10 years to come from 100% oil and gas revenue to maybe 100% green tech is significantly less risky, and I think that it will give significantly better returns to the existing shareholders that's already there. But I think that to help startups and growth companies is the ecosystem. We need investors to help and contribute, and you have to contribute in the long run. You can't perceive that the next deal is gonna pay for all the future opportunities. It's a continuous work, and it's a continuous work from a lot of people. So all cities need a ecosystem on a micro scale, but you also need a national ecosystem, and you need these international connections that we talked about earlier. So it's kind of finding our competitive advantage and using it to our own interest to position ourselves so that we can grow. And I think that the oil and gas industry has tremendous know-how with respect to solving. I mean, we've been solving problems on the North Sea Basin now for 40 years. So there's no reason why we can't solve equivalent problems in the climate crisis. So the opportunities are endless with respect to this, and I think that it's up to us to act.
I have to say, and I actually fell out of the room, but I can see that you continue the discussion, which is great. So some technical issues here. There's so much to discuss, access to capital, we need more capital, ecosystems, which you discussed, but we unfortunately have a tight time schedule today. So we have to close off. We just got started, but let's see if there will be a next seminar and a follow-up. But I want to thank all of you, all three, for joining the session today.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. I think this was a brilliant introduction to our next topic, where we will talk about international connections and export possibilities, and to a great big country, namely India. And we are so honored to have with us today the Indian ambassador to Norway, Dr. Bala Bhaskar. who has more than 34 years of experience. He's an engineer, an economist, and also a diplomat. He holds a graduate in civil engineering, and also he has a doctorate in economics. I know, Dr. Bhaskar, that you work very hard and very diligently to connect the Indian and the Norwegian market. And first of all, I really want to thank you personally, because you've been very helpful to us in Beyonder in connecting us with relevant business partners in India. So with the growing population in the world, the climate change and the challenges that we are all facing, how do you perceive India's role in this transition, and which actions are taking place in India on energy transition and sustainability goals?
First of all, thank you, Madam Christine, for your kind words about me, and also giving the opportunity to be here with you. First of all, let me explain a little bit, if you permit, about India's energy character. You know, broadly our energy sector is divided into two categories. One is the electricity part, power generation, and the second component is the transport sector. So about the 60% of our energy goes to transport sector, and the power sector is predominantly coal based right now. We have around 380,000 megawatts of installed capacity. Out of that, we have around 200,000, more than 200,000 coal based thermal power. Then we have at present around 90,000 megawatt of renewable energy. So in the coming 5 years, we want to increase our installed capacity to around 680,000 megawatt power. Out of this, we want to continuously indulge in changing this energy mix from non-renewable to renewables. So by 2026, we wanted to install around 275,000 megawatt of renewable energy. So you can see the enormous opportunity for the renewable sector. And in the recent past, India-Norway relations are increasingly characterized by the collaboration in high-end technologies, R&D, and other innovations. So it's a perfect match between India and Norway, because you have a great number of companies, including the Beyonder, that who are engaged in developing modern technologies in energy, and that way I think there is a huge potential for collaboration. See, in the coming 5 years, establishing 275,000 megawatt of renewable energy is a gigantic task. So that's where you can play a very important role. Coming back to the transport sector, our import bill is around 280 billion, around $200 billion import bill. We want to substitute that. So we are going in a big way for change of the energy mix in the transportation sector. That's where the battery technologies come into the picture. We are encouraging in a big way battery technologies in the transportation sector, starting with of course the small vehicles, two-wheelers, then three-wheelers, then we have you know that we have around 50,000 trucks, mining trucks, who badly need battery technologies because of the difficulties in the regular energy mix. So then we want to go for transportation, intercity transportation. So this is a also huge opportunity for companies from Norway, I mean, which you already led the way.
So for us as companies coming from Norway, we tend to look a little bit narrow. We when we want to go crazy, we start looking at the Scandinavian market, maybe the European, and then to go all the way to India. It can be quite a long step and a little bit frightening with culture differences and the way you do business. And are there any risks we should be aware of? Are there anything we should pay special attention to, as you see?
No, you have already gone a long way. You have crossed all the hurdles from Sweden to Germany to UK to India already. There are around 150 companies working in Norway. So that means you have already overcome those initial reservations or initial stumbling blocks. I think fairly comfortable in operating in Indian market. So I don't see any any challenges in terms of the kind of models that you adopt in India, and I don't see any risks because you have been already successful in facing the initial challenges. What is important to note down here is that you need to scale up the operations. As I mentioned to you, in the coming 5 years, you have to look at around 300,000 megawatt of power generation, for example. You have to look at massive transportation sector where the batteries, for example, where you are collaborating in the battery sector. You entering in one small tiny segment of mining sector itself will run into billions of dollars of business opportunities. So imagine the kind of opportunity in the transport buses and cars, and finally with the trains. So there is and both on the power generation and also in the transportation sector, we are going for a massive shift, and which you are already playing an important role. Only thing is you have to scale up the operations. You have to also come up with it's a massive country, country of 1.3 billion people. Any model that you introduce in India have to be economically viable. So this is where I urge Norwegian companies to come up with more cost-effective solutions. You are spending enormous money on R&D, so I suggest you should conduct more research and development and how to come out with cost-effective models and how to scale up operations. In terms of scaling up the operations, I suggest you can go for a massive joint venture models in India. There is a large number of companies from India who want to go global and then looking for partnerships, and there are a large number of startup companies both in India and both in Norway, which creates a perfect potential for collaboration. So India is the third largest country in the terms of startup ecosystem, and Norway is coming up in a big way. So this is another model where the startups can join and then scale up operations and then take forward these collaborations.
Okay, so and last for everyone, how do you think Norwegian companies should position themselves to be attractive and to meet relevant partners in India? Do you have any advice?
Yeah, my advice is, India is, as you are aware, is a big country, is a heterogeneous society, large number of provinces, around 32 provinces, and different cultures, different traditions. So finding a partner is a big challenge in such a vast country and diverse country like India. That's where Embassy of India in Oslo come into the picture, and then also Embassy of Norway in Delhi. We are collaborating closely, both the embassies. You can seek our help. You can also seek Norwegian embassy's help in Delhi. You can in fact seek help from both the embassies. We have laid special emphasis on encouraging these collaborations. Our leadership is closely engaged in taking this forward, this relationship with higher level, and starting from Prime Minister Solberg's visit to India in 2019, we placed our engagement at a very high level. Now, as members of Security Council, India and Norway are closely collaborating at the global level. So, I think this is a perfect moment for scaling up operations between India and Norway.
Perfect. With that, thank you so much, Dr. Bhaskar, for sharing with us. And I hope this was inspirational for other companies who wants to test and see and explore the Indian market that offers vast opportunities, I will have to say.
Thank you so much.
Then from energy transition in India to our next topic and speaker, and we are so glad to have with us Liv Marit Aarseth. She's the head of external communication at Greek Seafood here in Rogaland. She will talk about how her company works both internationally and also regionally to meet sustainability goal number 12, which is responsible consumption and production, and also number 14, life below water. So Liv Monica, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation to come here. First, just a very small, a brief introduction of Greek Seafood. We are an international company producing Atlantic salmon. Our headquarters is in Bergen, and we have our production in Norway, Shetland, and Canada. And last year we produced 87,000 tons of Atlantic salmon, which makes us one of the largest producers in the world. So, my topic today, how can farmed fish ensure to secure enough food for our growing population? And as well known and even discussed earlier in this session, our population is growing. And in the year 2050, we will be approximately 9.7 billion people. And we don't know much about the consumer behavior among all these people in the future, but we do know that they want to have food. They need to eat. The diet preferences among our population has changed. And today people eat more both of seafood and other animal meat, more than they did just some decades ago. And when it comes to seafood, the increased production, it has to come from aquaculture because our wild fish stocks, they are limited and have been stable since 1990. But why should one eat seafood? Why should one eat both wild seafood and farmed seafood and salmon in particular? One important reason is that it's very healthy for us, and it meets the dietary. It's recommended from the UN as a part of a healthy diet, and also it's a very environmentally conscious choice. All meat production, it has an impact on the environment, and for instance, it gives greenhouse gas emissions, and it requires use of water and other limited resources, as just like land space. If you're not to have a vegetarian diet, it's interesting to compare the different animal proteins to eat. So, for instance, when it comes to feed, the feed conversion ratio for different animal proteins. Feed conversion ratio means how many kilos of feed you need to produce 1 kilo of this animal protein. And when it comes to salmon, you need up to 1.5 kilos of feed to have 1 kilo of salmon. chicken, you need 2 kilos, and for cattle, you need up to 10 kilos. And also, when it comes to the edible yield, how much of the product that is eatable. Salmon is a very good, has a very good rate, because you can eat almost 70% of the salmon, compared with chicken and pork, which only gives approximately 50%. And the carbon footprint is also lower than for other animal food protein production. But there are challenges also in this industry, in the aquaculture industry. We have made great progress in finding more sustainable fish farming methods in the recent decades, but we still have many challenges to solve. For instance, to ensure coexistence with the nature and other species, improving fish health and welfare, finding sustainable feed ingredients, cutting carbon emissions even more than we have done so far, recycle our resources better, and promoting human rights, especially when it comes to our own suppliers. And I would also highlight finding sustainable feed ingredients. As I said, Grieg Seafood, we are one of the largest producers of Atlantic salmon. But compared with other aquaculture industries, the salmon industry is actually a very small industry. And compared with other industrial meat production, we are quite insignificant, actually. But all producers of both animal, mammals and so on, and fish proteins, we compete in the same market about the same feeding ingredients all over the world. So as we have been using less and less fish meal and fish oil from wild fish stocks, we need to find new ingredients, and mainly plant-based ingredients, such as soybean meal. But the soy industry, it also has its challenges, its issues, such as deforesting. So it's very important that we find ingredients that are both environmentally sustainable, but also produced in an ethical manner. When it comes to our operational focus areas, I would just present some of them. The fish welfare is a very important issue. The mortality rate in our farmed fish, we think it's too high. So we work with this in many ways to be better. Digitalization is one of these ways. We have more sensitive sensors. We use big data and artificial intelligence to support our decision making. And also, kind of as a bridge to the next one of the next speakers, we have used a lot of resources to develop post-smolt production, both in land farms and in closed sea cages. When we use bigger post-smolt, it means that when it's put into sea, it's older and bigger than in a traditional production cycles. So this means that it's exposed to environmental parameters and biological contagious things like lice and disease for just a short time. And this is better for the environment, it's better for the fish, and it prevents us from more delicing. So in Grieg Seafood, we truly believe that we are a solution in in finding a more sustainable future food production. But we are aware of the problems we have to overcome to become an even better solution for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liv Marit. Now we will hear from some more regional companies talking about their solutions, which could go well with either of the projects presented here today.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very proud to present Fish Globe here. My name is Tor Magne Madsen, and I'm a head of sales and projects in Fish Globe. As you heard Grieg Seafood before us, there's a lot of challenges in the fish farming industry. We believe and we firmly know that we are proving the technology we have every day and that we can be a sustainable technology for the future of fish farming. I'll start off with showing you a little movie with all the benefits that we have in our technology. As you see that we are a fully closed technology here with a full barrier towards escape, and we have a big tank of 3,500 cubic meters with optimized water circulation, making sure that the fish welfare and the growth conditions are good, as well as we solve the challenges with sea lice and reducing the environmental impact that a lot of people are talking about in the future. As you saw, we are solving a lot of the challenges, but basically we are also a local company looking for expansion within the international market. We are now building our globe that is equal to the one we have in operation. We are locally found, and we have a sustainable solution with building all the globes in polyethylene, which is 100% recyclable. We can also use fossil-free version for clients willing to pay for that. Our vision in Fish Globe is to develop sustainable turnkey solutions for the aquacultures. And we believe that we have a product now that's timed good in the market and in the industry, as you heard Grieg also saying, that's looking forward to using new technology to enable a sustainable growth for them. The last slide I'm going to show you on this is an animation of the most beautiful city in the world, Stavanger, with our globes located in Vågen. This is a full scale of the size, and as you see when it grows up in the full size here, you will see on the little one is equal to the one we have in operation, and the big one is one of the globes that we have in our portfolio that we will continue with building within next year. So we are more than happy to present our technology, and with this I wish to say thank you for having us here, and follow Fish Globe for further sustainable growth in the fish farming industry. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sjur Øsken in Clever. And we have the presentation coming up. We're into optimizing existing commercial real estate. And our challenge is, and I'll just get that presentation as well on, those energy efficient autonomous building. We talked about smart buildings, but we want to have autonomous building. If you look at the next slide, our part is a sustainable planet. Why do we say that? Yeah, when you look at the next slide again, you see that the building industry accounts for, in Europe, 36% of global emissions. We have in Norway, which has a lot of electricity or electric vehicles. There's a saying called the diesel shame, Like if you have your diesel car running for 5 minutes on a parking lot, it's socially acceptable now just to knock on the window and say, turn on, turn it off. But the buildings that are running 24/7, nobody does anything with it. And it does release CO2. And that is what we're going to do, or what we're doing something about. It's mostly all buildings are built already. We can't build all the new buildings. We can't retrofit it with all part. We need to do a change with the existing buildings. And this is why we developed the Clever. That's a software robot that's optimizing your existing ventilation, heating, cooling system in the building. And if you see it on the next slide, you see the results on it. By only touching into your existing infrastructure, we can optimize the running of the building, quality assure indoor air climate, as well as avoid wasting energy. We've had results on approximately 30% in the buildings we've done lately now. And imagine just being able to cut emissions or the energy usage with 30% with just by letting machines run your building even better. And if you see the next one as well, we have, since we're located at Forus, we also have a local, took an example from a local building, and this is a small building, 6,000 square meters, and it's saving 40,000 Norwegian kroner, which is approximately $5,000 per month, just in energy. And this money could be used to invent new projects, new services, and propel it further on. But how do we do it? Well, we see on the next slide is we built the Clever platform to take on all the data that's inside the building, let the machines decide how can the building prepare best possible ways for the weather to come, and how is it going to react if it's suddenly a lot of people in the building. So let the computers decide, and we'll get a lot of savings. That's it. So install Clever, get the building smart. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Egil Thomas Andersen. I'm working as Chief Sales Officer in Pale Blue. Thank you for this opportunity, and now I will explain how Pale Blue's products is used in a sustainable context. Pale Blue enable our clients to achieve much better efficiency and earnings by providing our world-class, recognized world-class interactive visual solutions. And for the employees in the companies, that means that they will have a much more secure and productive work environment. They are secure in both the individual work and the work procedures they are going to perform, very often in a hazardous environment. But our clients, they will also be helped in meeting the United Nations sustainability goals, which has been presented several times already today. And our solutions are in particular at help in these defined 6 areas. What we are providing our clients with are virtual and augmented reality solutions. And we are also merging these 2 solutions into one, and to introduce even another name that's called mixed reality solutions. Our training simulators are used for both individual training, both in hands-on practical work operations and in soft skill training, And soft skills training is communication between employees, clients, and so on and so forth. It has been used, VR technology has been used quite a lot for individual training. But what we now see and what companies experience is it's not due to that the individual is not good enough in her or his job. It's when the collaborative work procedures are not well trained that accidents occur. So that's an area where we'll see a great growth in times to come. It's been documented for several years how VR training make things more efficient in operations. The individual training is reduced with goes to 4 times faster compared to traditional training, and companies experience up to 40% better efficiency and earnings in the operations. And the key is that when you have VR simulators available and you can use them from wherever you might be, from home, from your workplace, you have the ability to do repetition. And repetition is the key to become much more familiar and work smarter over time. When you are not forced to travel to locations to do training, companies will reduce travel, and with reduced travel cost, you also reduce the greenhouse impact travel has into the society. This has been also been documented how big impact does it actually have. And it's documented that one individual can have up to an impact reducing the greenhouse spillage with as much as 1 ton per year. So, Pale Blue, we as a company, we have located in Stavanger, but we have offices several places in Europe, Netherlands, and in the States, and our clients are not only in Norway. Our most famous clients would be such as NASA and European Space Agency, and they are using our training simulators to train all the astronauts going out to the European Space Station. So that's Pale Blue. Thank you for the attention.
Yes, hi there. So my name is Brage Johansen. I'm the CEO of Heimdall Power. Whatever you're going to do this next decades, you are dependent on a functioning and high capacity power grid. Even if you're making microgrids and are going to be kind of isolated from the grid, you will need some support at some times, and then you want a very efficient and affordable power grid. And the power grid today is in big trouble. Mankind's largest machine, it's called, and we have pretty good control with the consumer element of this. The houses and the businesses that uses electricity. I mean, you have automatic metering systems, you have smart house, so you have lots of sensors there. It's also quite easy to get control over the transformer stations and the production part. That's the yellow signs on this slide. But then you have the largest part of this machine, the thousands of kilometers of power lines and pylons or masts that have no sensors. They're run blindfolded, and the reason for that is it has been working for 100 years, so why change it? But everything have changed the last 10 years. With the electrification of society, a large part of variable renewables coming in, solar and wind, and extreme weather. All of this are challenging the capacity and operations of the power grid, which you are dependent on. The solution is to digitize the power grid. And you need only 2 things. You need sensors that you attach directly to the power lines, and you need software to control and analyze these data streams. To digitize the grid costs only 5% of building a new power line. Building a new power line can take 10 years and is a very big operation, hampering with both people and nature space. Digitizing the grid with a solution as ours will increase, on average, the capacity with 25%. This is much. So, we have made a sensor platform, the Neuron. This is a very robust and reliable sensor, and we can put in lots of sensors in this platform. It is self-powered and should stay on the lines for several decades. And we have made our sensor for mass production, mass installation. Today we are mounting it with a pole on live lines, so you don't need to shut down the power to install the sensors. And tomorrow, that means this autumn, we will install with drones. And we're producing this at West Control Tau. So it's a very short here for us in Rogaland. It's very short production place. I just had to bring this picture in. It's beautiful. A sensor at Statnet's line up in the high mountains in Norway. Today we have installations in 6 countries with 14 customers. And we're heading into a $14 trillion market towards 2050. That is a market that is bigger than the whole oil and gas market at the same period of time. And I could say that it's a global market. You saw Europe, but we could have India there, we could have United States. We have requests from all over the world now. This is, of course, a very environmentally friendly and necessary product to install, because the whole green shift is reliant on the power grid. So, we are a startup. We are growing very fast. We have offices in Oslo and Stavanger. We are installing now in Northern Europe. And we have very good industrial and financial owners. Heimdall Power, we deliver max power, max control, max uptime for a minimum of cost. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much for all those interesting presentations. Please feel free to reach out to any of those companies that have presented here today, either on the platform or you can get in touch with us in Gateway to Growth. Now we will hear why Gateway to Growth is so important, not only for our region, but for Norway in general. The topic is why we need an energy transition and for clear goals and policies to boost climate technology export from Norway. The man to tell us more about this you have already met earlier today. He is the Director of Strategy and Business Development from Export Credit Norway. Please welcome Ivar Slengesol.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we can move on to the next slide. There is a race on internationally to build the future's green export industries. And here's just a couple of examples from our neighboring countries. The Swedish Minister for Industry saying that we need a climate transition, and this is about creating industry in Sweden and then take that out to create employment, to create new industry, while at the same time contributing to battling climate change. And similarly in Denmark, a very clear export strategy for energy technologies, mainly green energy technologies, and to double exports from to up to 200 billion NOK by 2030. Next slide, please. Now, if we look at Norway's trade balance, it is worsening. Trade balance, of course, is exports divided by imports. If you look at the blue graph on top, that's the total trade balance, including oil and gas. We had a positive trade balance of about 460 billion NOK at the peak in 2008. In 2020, that trade balance was negative, including oil and gas, as I said, for the first time since the 80s. And if you look at the bottom line, the orange line, that's the trade balance for goods without oil and gas. As you can see, that's declining steadily, and it's now more than 350 billion in negative territory. And we need to turn this. We need to turn this trend, because as the central bank governor said just before the corona crisis, we're running a huge deficit, and that cannot continue. Growth is in public sector. We need more growth. We heard from a lot of good companies here today, but we need to see even more growth to turn this trend. Next slide, please. So the trade balance is one indicator of export performance. Another indicator is market shares. And on this table, as a country, you would like to be on top of the orange line slicing through the middle of the slide, because those countries have gained market shares. And not surprisingly, emerging economies such as China and India are topping this chart. And that's fine. These are emerging economies, so they are gaining market shares. They're growing fast. But what worries me and what worries us is that Norway is also losing out to our neighboring countries and to other European countries. In fact, no other country than Norway among OECD countries and emerging economies have lost more of global market shares over the past 20 years or the past 5 years. So that's a trend we need to turn, because export performance is really also an indicator of competitiveness. So we need a transition. We know that the oil and gas production will go down from the mid-2020s, and we need to fill that gap with new companies and new industries. So next slide, please. The Norwegian export industry is dominated by what I call the big four. So those are the four big ones to the left on this slide: oil and gas, accounting for 40 to 50% of the exports. The supply industry for maritime and offshore, then the power-related industries such as aluminium smelters as number 3, and then seafood as number 4. So those in total they account for 80% of total exports. The remaining segments account for the remaining 20% then, and those are small industries. So we need scalability, as we discussed here earlier today as well, for many of these small industries. So that's a very big challenge to get scalabilities and build ecosystems around these smaller export industries. But we need to do that to fill that gap that I mentioned. So next slide, please. Rogaland is an exporting county, even without oil and gas. We've heard from many good companies today. So there's a good basis to build on here. Rogaland is Norway's 3rd or 4th largest exporting county. So next slide, please. And I'm optimistic. A lot of things are happening now. Just over the past week, 3 big consortia have announced their intention to bid for development rights in the North Sea. For example, I have been serving on the steering committee of the Norwegian offshore wind cluster for the past 3 or 4 years. That's a cluster where the center of gravity is Rogaland. Almost 300 member companies now in that cluster, up from 159 just last August. So a lot of good things are happening right now. Next slide, please. But we need to move on. We need to have a more action-based, and if you can just click so you get those next points up. You can just get all 6 points up. We have proposed 6 steps to boost exports, and I would just end with 2 of them, those in orange here. We need a bold and measurable export strategy like the ones they have in Denmark, for example, and in many other countries. And the key point here is measurable. We need to put numbers on what we are trying to achieve in terms of exports, in terms of employment, in terms of number of companies, scalable companies. And we need to have concrete sector deals for some selected value chains that it provides a clear plan and a way to follow up and a way to make sure that we as a country deliver. And a sector deal is between the industry itself, for example, the offshore wind industry, and the authorities. So we have a framework around it, and that we know we're on the right track, because good intentions are necessary, but it's not enough. We need to measure results to make sure that we are on the right track and that we are managing the transition. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ivar. And now for last, but definitely not least, our partner in Gateway to Growth, and a lady who has helped us a lot from platform to network. She is also the founder of the first floating entrepreneur lab and global ecosystems for ocean innovators with partners from over 17 countries. She has worked to push sustainability, entrepreneurship, next generation, and diversity across the maritime industry for over 15 years. Now she will tell us more about empowering generation cleanup and how we will connect and collaborate in the future on a platform connecting people, technologies, opportunities, and challenges. Please welcome Birgit Marie Liodden.
Thank you so much. And whoops, there is a bit of a sound in the background here. Let's see if that worked now. So delighted to be here today and present the Ocean Opportunity Lab to you, to all the innovators and established players that are gathered. So I will just dive straight into a short video by the Ocean Opportunity Lab. So, when establishing the Ocean Opportunity Lab, our mission is to empower startups, innovators, generation cleanup. We work towards the evolution of emission and waste-free ocean industries through optimizing the next generations and the new thinkers' ability and interest in leading and creating change. We wish to enable fresh minds to reach the establishments, breaking silos. And then we have a huge issue, which I think is well addressed here today. The big corporates and organizations, they have global networks, alliances, resources, and the benefits to work efficiently. But what about small innovators and growth companies? We see that currently there is an unaddressed and untackled gap, which is the access to existing resources for entrepreneurs and change makers. So we have looked at how we could connect the innovators and entrepreneurs across different segments and industries and across various parts of the world, with Norway as the leading country ahead, and creating a community gathered around a transparent and interactive map a network of these innovators, enabling them to find, share, and connect with the optimal resources that they need to get to the next stage of growing their business. And we thought that what if today's problem solvers could spend most of their time building solutions rather than chasing for existing and available resources. So we have built, together with other Norwegian tech entrepreneurs, the tool Spawn, a matchmaking and opportunity creation platform built on a pay-it-forward mentality. This is built by, with, and for Norwegian and international entrepreneurs and growth companies. We see that there is an ocean of opportunities out there, but we need faster and better innovation between the various actors in order to succeed, both when it comes to the Norwegian position for the future, but also when it comes to delivering on the UN SDGs. So we are super happy to let you in on the tool Spawn.
I don't know where we might be. I don't know, we'll have to see. All I know is no matter where we are, I belong with you. Be the harbor to my boat, together we can make this float. Let's figure out our buoyancy, leave the storm outside us and be right here now.
So we are mapping the world of ocean and renewable energy startups. And now we are calling all ocean and energy startups to get themselves on the map. We have an onboarding period and a mapping period towards a global launch at Oslo Innovation Week, end of September. And per today, we have actors from 25 countries on the map. And we are really looking forward to do our part in help enabling the new transition of Norway and our fellow cities and regions. So thank you so much.
That was it. We're finished for today. Thank you so much to all the speakers and participants for joining us. We invite you to continue the discussion and talks and reach out to each other in the networking section on the platform. From all of us here in Rogaland and Beyonder Battery Center, we wish you all a great afternoon.